Hey guys, my name is Rollen. Today we're going to be taking a look at a different take on a classic monster. Jakob's Wife was written by Mark Steensland, Travis Stevens, and Kathy Charles. It was also directed by Stevens and was released on April 16th of this year. The wife of a minister stuck in an unsatisfying life discovers a bolder way to live after being bitten by a vampire. However, it comes with a bloody cost. So, without further ado, this is my review of Jakob's Wife. The movie starts off with just the most riveting sermon I've ever heard.
By the washing of the water with the word, that he might present the church to himself.
Here, we're introduced to Jakob Fetter, played by Larry Fessendon, his wife Anne, played by Barbara Crampton, and some of the local churchgoers, including Amelia, played by Naisha Bell, who, as it so happens, seems to have been followed home after attending church. The following morning, we get a peek into the rather dull and repetitive life that Anne lives. There is a touch of excitement, shall we say, when Sheriff Mike Hess, played by J. Devon Johnson, questions Jakob and Anne about Amelia as she has gone missing. There's further talk about the young woman during dinner that night, where we're introduced to Jakob's brother, Bob, played by Mark Kelly, and his wife, Carol, played by Sarah Lind.
How many times do I have to tell you not to take the Lord's name in vain?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that Pastor Jakob would be dumping a barrel of holy water on me within 5 seconds. The three of them toss around speculations about what happened to Amelia, which Anne finds to be rather apathetic of them. Then it's a night of low-key disdain towards Jakob for Anne. The next morning, she tells Jakob that the project she and some other locals have been working on involving the old mill has been greenlit. The plan is to make it into a retail space, but Jakob is neither thrilled nor approving of this. To add a bit more tension to this, Anne mentions that the designer who has been hired for the project is Tom Lowe, an old flame of hers. Anne meets with Tom, played by Robert Russler, for some drinks and a bit of catching up. This is where Tom confirms that the life that Anne is living now is quite far removed from the dreams and ambitions she had years ago. They then go to the old mill to have a look around. Tom admits that the main reason he accepted this job was because of Anne, and they proceed to make out. This is interrupted, though, by a mysterious voice that seems to be calling Anne's name. So they venture further into the darkness. They discover a couple of wooden crates that, according to Anne, hadn't been there previously. The only thing missing is some rats.
Oh, hell no!
This is never a good sign. Bail! At this point, I'm just waiting for Dwight Fry, or a guy wearing skull-like face paint to dance into frame. You know, this is the third time I've seen him die in a horror movie, and the second time it was because of a vampire. Sometime later, Anne returns home, much to the relief of Jakob. However, he does notice that she seems to be acting strange. There's not much time to inquire about this as she goes upstairs. I think she's handling this rather well, given. The next morning, Anne definitely appears to be acting differently, but Jakob has to attend church and provide righteous guidance to a couple of local pot-smoking teens, played by Angeli Simone and Omar Salazar. This'll be important later, trust me. Upon returning home, Jakob finds that Anne has given herself a bit of a makeover. They go out for dinner, but it seems that Anne has no interest in food. Tension gradually builds between Jakob and Anne, where she finally voices some of her frustrations with him constantly speaking for and over her. Anne takes a trip to the grocery store, but once again, none of the food seems at all appealing to her, until she tries some of the blood from the packaged meat. She leaves the store with literal bags of blood from the butcher. Back at the house, Anne has a glass of said blood while we get a bit of a musical montage of her rearranging the furniture, including lifting an entire couch with ease. This abruptly ends though when the animal blood ends up not quite agreeing with her, and she was wearing white too. Meanwhile, Jakob goes to Bob and Carol's to discuss his concerns about Anne's odd behavior with his brother. His main concern is that these changes started after she met with Tom, so Bob suggests that Jakob go find Tom and confront him. Back at home, Anne has another encounter with the master lurking outside. I can't show you that. I'm pretty sure Susan wouldn't like it. The next day, Anne goes to a dental appointment, where it's discovered that she appears to have a couple of new teeth coming in. Here's another, more concerning discovery. The light used to whiten teeth is essentially like taking a direct shot of sunlight to the mouth for vampires. While Anne runs around looking like the poster child for why you need to be careful when taking a flaming shot, Jakob visits the old mill. But instead of Tom, he discovers Oscar and Ellie. To be honest, it's probably a good thing he didn't find Tom. However, Amelia finds him. With some help from his trusty mini Bible and Ellie, they're able to escape. There is another issue to worry about though, as the Master is in the Fetter home. Anne attempts to fend off the unwanted influence, or practice for an audition for Thriller. Their neighbor, Navid, played by Ned Yosef, enters the house believing that Anne needs some help. And technically she does, but it doesn't end well for Navid. Jakob arrives to find the mess that Anne created, which forces her to explain everything that happened to him, and what is a devoted husband to do but clean up his wife's crime scene. Just in time too, as Sheriff Hess knocks on their door. He tells Jakob that Ellie came to the station claiming that a vampiric Amelia murdered Oscar, and Jakob was there fending her off. However, when they investigated, they found nothing. So Oscar has been added to the, as of currently, relatively short list of missing people. Once Hess leaves, Jakob and Anne deal with the reanimated Navid, see what I did there? By staking and burying him in blessed dirt. Afterwards, they head to the mill to face the Master. But first they have to deal with Amelia. While Jakob is convinced that he can still save her and prevents him from becoming the next meal by staking Amelia. Things never turn out well for secondary vampires. One down and one to go. But Jakob has a bit of an existential crisis and aborts mission. He believes that Anne becoming a vampire is a form of punishment for her almost cheating on him. And Anne believes he's acting weak and scared because this is the first time he has ever had to fight for her. Finding her own way home since Jakob left her, she discovers that the Master, played by Bonnie Aarons, beat her there. With Jakob under her control, she gives Anne an ultimatum: either kill him and be free, or let him live and return to a life of servitude. Anne does not, in fact, kill Jakob, and they make up. There's still the matter of Anne's bloodthirst to deal with, though. But Jakob has an idea.
You're right, it is helping.
Of the many benefits that weed possesses, easing the vampiric condition is one. Who knew? Anne and Jakob have a heart-to-heart and manage to get on the same page through this as well. They get a phone call concerning one of the churchgoers and they go to her house to check on her. They find that Maddie, played by Kathy Newcomb, has passed away with no sign of vampire influence. But why let such good blood go to waste? They really do need to improve their body smuggling skills though, as Navid's wife, Mariana, played by Giovanni Cruz, calls the sheriff about their odd behavior. So when Jakob heads towards the old mill, Sheriff Hess and Deputy Colton, played by CM Punk, stop him. Unfortunately, the contents of his suitcase don't help him plead his innocence. Things aren't going so well for Anne either, as Bob and Carol come by for dinner, and, well, obviously, Bob calls the cops, which leads the sheriff, deputy, and reverend back to the Fetter house. That sounds like the setup for a joke. However, the Master beat them there and uses Carol to speak through before killing her and Bob. She then tells Anne that she was kind of like her before she was turned. She wants Anne to make yet another choice where she could drink the Master's blood and be in control, or let the bloodthirst control her. But Jakob stakes the Master before Anne can decide. So, once again, Anne is left stuck in her life. Only this time, her life is altered. Anne and Jakob sit down and have a talk once the sheriff and deputy have left. Anne tells Jakob that she doesn't want to search for a cure and that she's happy with who she has become. With tension between them and something of a cliffhanger, the credits roll. The plot of Jacob's Wife is interesting. It's a different sort of take on vampires, but the major concept is the relationship between Jakob and Anne's growth. It's all about a woman who got trapped in a boring and unfulfilling life, finding a new way to live, all while she and her husband struggle with what that means for them. It's a bit of a slow burn, but after the encounter with the Master, things do pick up and become more more interesting. I was a bit unsure of how I felt about the story, but after a bit I found that it was entertaining enough. Not quite my taste, but still a good piece. I must start off on the characters by speaking about Barbara Crampton. It's always fun to see her in a horror movie, and I'm quite glad that she's getting more leading roles in recent history. It's semi-well known now that unfortunately Hollywood tends to pigeonhole actresses of a certain age into particular roles, or simply ignores them altogether. Her portrayal of Anne was quite sympathetic and made me root for her to stand up for herself, and her wants. The transition that she portrayed from a meek and timid wife of a pastor to a strong and independent vampire was good. Larry Fessendon did a very nice job of playing the part of a devout religious man who was struggling with this new side of someone he had known for decades, and whether or not he should fight for her. I was happy to see Bonnie Aarons again, this time with a role that let her do more than just look scary and menacing. I feel like each actor did a solid job of balancing humor and drama, mixed into the horror of the situations. They were all believable, and I can't really point out flaws among them. Plus, it's cool to see a number of familiar horror faces. The special effects that are a mix of practical and CGI actually lean a little bit more towards practical. The blood looked quite good, though over-exaggerated, but that was intentional. I like the look of the vampires as well. At times the CGI work does look a little rough. I saw a behind-the-scenes photo of Bonnie Aarons in her master makeup, and I was actually kind of concerned, because it looked very low budget. However, once I saw it on screen, it did look better than I anticipated. Granted that her hands do look quite puppet-like a couple of times, particularly during the scene outside of Anne's window. The atmosphere and settings aren't extremely impressive to me. It all works just fine, it's just nothing really stood out to me. However, I do like the use of fog, because it feels like something right out of a Universal monster movie. I also appreciate how the movie does seem to meld a certain gothic essence into a modern small town. So all in all, not bad. The music and score is actually what I liked most about this film. Tara Bush created a pretty cool score that added to the gothic feel of things, while also adding a touch of eerie mystery. My favorite is Bloodletting by Concrete Blonde, during Anne's blood drinking and furniture rearranging scene. With all that being said, I'm giving Jacob's Wife 5.5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. This is a film that Barbara Crampton herself was pushing for some time. It's campy and clearly trying to convey a message or two. I think it comes across a bit jumbled and disjointed once in a while though. But if you're in it for the blood, a bit of gore, and vampiric fun, I think you'll enjoy it. I would recommend Jacob's Wife to Barbara Crampton fans and other horror royalty, vampire fans, people who enjoy some twisted humor in their horror that doesn't take itself too seriously, and anyone who would like to see Nosferatu-style vampires get more love. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like to let me know. Don't forget to leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of this movie, and if you have any suggestions for horror movies you would like to see me cover in the future. You can support the channel through my Patreon, where you would also get early access to videos like this. Also, don't forget to share this video to help the channel grow, and subscribe for more videos like this. See you later.